Hello friends, and welcome to my channel for another custom action figure video. I am thrilled to be sharing this one with you. This is a figure that I have wanted to make literally for years. I just haven't had the capabilities to do it because sculpting in 1/12 scale by hand is very, very difficult. But recently I picked up a 3D printer and a sculpting app, and now I can make my own head sculpts, and this is the first one I made. I've always wanted a realistic looking version of Bruce Timm's Superman. I love the aesthetic of taking something that is a cartoon and with very graphic kind of sharp lines and just the simplistic animation style and applying like a realistic filter over it and ending up with something like this. And I'm just so thrilled with how this turned out. I've been sculpting my whole life, so I really just needed to learn how to do it digitally. I played with Blender for a little bit a couple years ago, but I found Blender to be not quite as user-friendly as I'd hoped. So a good friend of mine put me onto Nomad Sculpt. It's an app for the iPad, and I watched some tutorials, learned how to use it, and here we are. So here's a look at the sculpt itself. Here's a look at it without the color layer on it, so you can see just kind of what the raw sculpt looks like. It took me, a little bit of time to get used to how the program works. And then there was the whole thing of trying to figure out the output of, sending it to the 3D printer and sizing it correctly and, doing test prints and not having those screw up. So I really actually hate 3D printing, but you can't argue with the results. So I'm just over the moon with how this thing looks. This is exactly what I wanted it to be. And it just feels so good to have it exist in a physical space now. A little bit of information about the rest of the figure. It's on a V-Toys Zero body, and I actually sculpted out the shoulders, the triceps, and the chest a bit to make it a little bit more in line with the kind of Bruce Timm aesthetic, the very top heavy, the way he designs his characters. But I still wanted it to have that realism to it, so it's kind of a mix between the two. It's not implausible, but it's, a little bit exaggerated. I just, wanted to stick with a very classic looking Superman. The blue is from a 2-piece bodysuit from GPS lot on eBay, where I get most of my soft goods from. The trunks I made out of a red bodysuit that was made by C. Ford Charles on eBay. The S shield I was going to make, but then I ended up buying a second Muff Toys Clark Kent. And I actually just cut the S out of one of the spare Superman shirts that he has that you can put underneath his business suit. And I just adhered it to the front, and it worked perfectly. It's a very, the Superman S on the cartoon changes a lot because it's hand drawn and it's a little different in every shot. But I felt that this was a really good approximation of it. Just a classic S, and I loved the size for this body that I've kind of sculpted out, so I thought it was perfect. The cape is from a knockoff BVS Superman Mezco figure that I just saved in a drawer for a long time, and I cut it to fit. I also had to augment the bodysuit, so it was originally a turtleneck, and I had to basically cut a square collar, and then I folded and glued over the edge so that it would be nice and straight and kind of squared off like it needs to be. And I did the same thing with the edges of the cape. The cape itself, I actually used a trick that my buddy Kit Bash Customs showed me, which was what he did on his Mezco Man of Steel edition Superman. I drilled very small holes just under the collarbone and then stuck the cape in there and glued it in place. And it just worked out perfectly, so shout out to him for that. The belt I actually made out of yellow electrical tape. I've made Superman belts before, and they've always been pretty difficult trying to paint pleather, trying to use an iron-on vinyl, and ultimately a couple layers of yellow electrical tape is perfect. And then the buckle is actually an enamel dot that I got from the craft store that I painted to match. So looking at this a little more closely on the workbench in some more direct lighting, and you can get a better idea of the amount of paint that is on this thing. These have taken me quite a long time to paint. There's a lot of layers to them, and I ended up redoing it because I wasn't happy with it. So this is the finished version. So the plan is that I will be making these head sculpts available It's going to be a very limited quantity. I'm not selling the file and I'm not selling any blanks. These will all be hand painted by me. So I'll have more info about how to get those at the end of the video. But I mentioned that here now because what we're going to see is a bunch of the in progress heads. So this is what it looks like printed. I actually printed them in a flesh tone, but this was the first test print and it ended up being a little bit too big. So once I was able to nail down the size for the V-Toys body, I printed up a bunch of them. So here you can see the various stages of painting. This is kind of the first base coat, and I needed to go with something really kind of tan and warm like this because I'm making this set for the V-Toys body. Here's one that is a little further along with another couple layers of flesh tone on it. Then we look at this one and it's a little further along still, but it doesn't have any of the detailing in terms of like the 5 o'clock shadow or the red blood vessels and, you know, different like kind of blues under the eyes and, you know, just the different tones that our faces have, right? And then this one is just about done. This one just needs the eyes and the eyebrows, and then it is pretty much finished. Here you can see from the very first step on the right to pretty close to being done on the left. So quite a few steps. And just something a little fun, here he is with my custom realistic animated series Batman. Now, this is a sculpt made by Oribus, who has done a lot of really cool 1/12 scale head sculpts. This is like a very realistic take on the animated Batman. Obviously, mine is still a little exaggerated, my Superman, and so I would like to make down the line a head to go with this version of Batman that matches my Superman. But for now, this one's pretty cool. You know, it needs some work. I need to redo the collar area. This is an older custom, so I'm definitely better at this than I was when I made that one. I'd like to redo the chest emblem and, you know, a lot of work needs to be done with this guy, but it still looks pretty cool on the shelf next to the appropriate Batmobile. And here's a little something special for all the YouTube homies who watch the entire video. I didn't put this in the thumbnail and I haven't shared this anywhere else, so those of you who stick with me throughout these whole videos, you get a little surprise. I also made a Clark Kent. This is what that extra Muff Toys Clark Kent that I picked up was for. I bought the brown suit version and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna need that blue suit because I need to make a Clark Kent to go with this. Eventually I'd love to make, you know, the whole main cast, like Lois, Jimmy, Lex, maybe even Perry White. We'll see what happens. But for now I have Clark and Superman and I'm really excited about this. The expression's a little bit different. Obviously the hair is different and, you know, his eyes are a little more open, I guess, like a little less kind of squinty Superman, a little more inquisitive Clark. And then I made a little spiral notebook for him, which I'm really proud of. It's kind of difficult, actually. I wanted to share this as kind of a little YouTube exclusive for the homies who stick out through the whole video. So thank you for watching to the end, as always. I'm going to be making these head sculpts available, as I mentioned, for both the V-Toys body and the Mezco Man of Steel Superman. Very limited quantity. The only way to get the information on when and where and all that is to subscribe to my newsletter. So I will have that as a link in the description. I'm doing it that way so that everybody can receive an email at the same time with the same information on pricing, availability, all that good stuff. I'm going to be selling it through my online store, which is through Big Cartel. It's my long established online store where I sell a lot of my original art and my books through there. And I plan to try to time it to where everybody will have notice and it will be in a convenient time of the month when you didn't just have to pay rent or your mortgage, you know, to the later half of the month or something. So I'm going to try to take all that into consideration to make it as easy on people as possible. You know, because we all know what it's like to be a collector and have something drop at like the worst time. And if you subscribe to my newsletter, you'll be the first to know when and where to get these. So with that being said, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you have not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. And please click the like button. And most importantly, share a link to the video. If you know somebody who loves Superman or the animated series or Batman the animated series and action figures, any combination therein, who would enjoy seeing these and appreciate, what I made here, I'd love it if you'd send them a link and get them to watch it too, because ultimately views are what help the channel grow and they are what help sustain the channel so that I can keep making videos stay tuned for more. I've got all the stuff you can see in the background. I will be doing a collection tour video very soon. I'm long overdue, and I've just been getting a few things dialed in and redone so that I can show it off with a little more pride. As of this recording, I am nearing 10,000 subscribers, so thank you all so much for the support. Like, that's incredible. It's really been fun to build this from the ground up very organically, and I can't wait to share more stuff with you. I have a lot of cool things on the horizon. I'm going to be doing some more tours of other people's collections, maybe some kind of toy hunts of some of the local shops here in town where I live, and just looking to expand this more and do more cool stuff. So I invite you to subscribe and join me for all that. And until next time, keep your head on swivel.